Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Scrutiny Committee. It's the 9th of June 2021. Just to make you all aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Can I also welcome any member of the public and press to today's meeting? Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only and not speak or participate? I would also like to welcome member of the Regeneration and Sustainable Development Scrutiny Committee who are invited to attend today's meeting. Can I please remind you all to switch your phone to silent for the duration of the meeting? In addition, can I refer you to the protocols for remote meetings which have been previously circulated? Namely, the microphone should be switched to mute unless you are speaking. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, can you please indicate either by the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via Teams? I will assume that you have all read the paperwork before us today prior to this meeting. Please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electronic hand function or to raise any technical issues. When asking a question, can you please indicate which page number you are referring to? The first item on the agenda is to do a roll call. I am Councillor Saifur Rahman, the chair, and I am present. I will now call on Chloe, the Democratic Service Officer, to do the roll call. Chloe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mark was present. Councillor Sharon Friegat.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Wyndham Griffiths.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Nigel Hunt.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Steve Hunt.
I'm here, Chloe.
Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Simon Noyle.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Alan Llewellyn.
Hello, Chloe. Diolch, yes, I'm present.
Councillor Sandra Miller.
Present.
Councillor Rydia Maisen.
Yeah, present, Chloe. Present, yeah.
Councillor Suzanne Paddison.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Annette Purcell. Councillor Sheila Penry.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Sonia Reynolds.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Rachel Taylor.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Aaron Mulcock.
Present, all present.
And now call the members of the Regeneration and Sustainable Development Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Chris Jones. Councillor Dean Causey.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Hugh James. Councillor Jamie Evans. Ramsey. Councillor Sean Percy.
Present.
And Cabinet members, Councillor Edward Latham.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Carol Clement Williams.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Mike Harvey.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Doreen Jones.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Alan Lockyer.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Peter Rees.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Peter Richards.
Present, Chloe.
And Councillor Annette Wingrave.
Present, Chloe.
And officers, Karen Jones.
Present.
Howell Jenkins.
Present.
Andrew Thomas.
Present.
Andrew Jarrett.
Present, Chloe.
Nicola Pierce.
Present.
Craig Griffiths.
Present.
Hugh Jones. Kerry Morris. Simon Brennan.
Present.
Mike Shaw.
Apologies on behalf of Mike, Chloe.
Lisa Willis.
Present.
Jane Woodman-Mouth.
Present.
Have I missed any officers today? I think that's everyone, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chloe. The next item on the Cabinet Scrutiny agenda is item number 2, Chair's announcement. We have chosen to scrutinize item 4 on the Cabinet Board agenda. There is also one urgent item on the Cabinet agenda. However, we have chosen not to scrutinize that report today. Moving on to item number 3 on the Cabinet agenda, declaration of interest. Can members please indicate whether they have any declaration in interest to the items that we have chosen to scrutinize today? Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
I just need to declare an interest in case anybody does desire to ask a question on the private item 7, as a coordinator of a bid and co-author.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else. Okay, moving on then. Item number 4 on the Cabinet agenda, pre-decision scrutiny. We will now move to the Cabinet papers. The item we will be scrutinizing is agenda item 4, which is an item 4 on the Cabinet special. Agenda item number 4, UK Levelling Up Fund for Neath. It's a Neath Talbot project proposal. Simon Brennan is the reporting officer and Lisa Wills will be providing a presentation. This item is for decision. So can I hand you over to, I believe it's Lisa, please.
I think I'll introduce it, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, please do, Simon.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Lisa, what we'll do is we'll split it into 2 parts. So Lisa will give you a quick overview of the Levelling Up Fund in terms of the criteria behind it, etc. And then I'll run through the project, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Can you confirm you can see my screen, please?
Yes, I can see it, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right there, Lisa, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll give you a background to the UK Government Levelling Up Fund, and then Simon will talk you through the projects. So the Levelling Up Fund, it's a UK-wide infrastructure fund. There's approximately £240 million for Wales over the next 4 years. It's a competitive fund across the whole of the UK. Neath Talbot has been designated a Category 1 area based on need. It's a new way of working in terms of each constituency area of a local authority can apply for up to £20 million worth of capital funding for projects, which needs to be endorsed by the MP. Under this first round of Levelling Up Fund, which was announced in the March spending review, the UK spending review, the priorities are linked to transport investments, regeneration and town centre investment, and cultural investment. All applications need to go through stakeholder engagement, and that's with the MPs, and also we've consulted with private, public and third sector stakeholders. The timescales are quite challenging. The bid submission needs to be in by the 18th of June, and that's an application, stakeholder engagement, independent cost verifications. When we submit to UK Government next Friday lunchtime, the UK Government will then assess the projects, and they will look at the projects based on deliverability in terms of the fact that the projects need to start spending this financial year, in terms of strategic fit with Levelling Up Fund priorities and also local priorities, and value for money. So that's in terms of a benefit cost ratio, and we've been supported by economists on the benefit cost ratio in the economic case. Future funding rounds of the Levelling Up Fund are yet to be announced, and these funds, so this fund along with the Community Renewal Fund, are precursors to the Shared Prosperity Fund, which is due to launch in April next year. And as part of this process, we've developed a long list of projects which we'll be developing for further rounds, and but we prioritise these in terms of the criteria that UK Government has stipulated in the prospectus. I'll pass over now to Simon, who will talk you through the proposals for Neath and the Abraham constituencies.
Thanks, Lisa. Just to remind members, obviously in the papers, I think it's on page 15, we've got the setup there for the long list that we started off with when we started doing these projects. And as Lisa has touched on in the initial introduction, we had to look through a variety of different assessments, if you like, to see whether it was deliverable, strategic fit, value for money, etc. Obviously, they had to pass all of those criteria for those to take them forward. So we started off with a long list, which we went through, assessed, and then came up with what we felt were a deliverable set of projects that also would meet critically would meet the UK government criteria, because there was little point in us submitting these, obviously, unless that was the case. So the first one on your screen there is the Neath Town Centre public realm. This is the area alongside the new development, new £14 million retail and leisure development in the town centre, which is a critical part of the regeneration of the town centre and bringing people back into the town centre post-COVID. It's going to be some high quality public realm area, which will include electrical hookups and a large screen, etc. And the idea of it is to enable a far more community use than is currently allowed to do, and to host events, festivals, etc. And critically to improve the linkages into the town centre. Obviously, you've got a range of different developments that we've had around there. We've completed the Civic Centre many years ago. Then that was followed by the new multi-storey car park. The leisure and retail development is making very good progress on site. And then just on the opposite side of the road there, you've got the new development by Coastal, which is a mix of retail and small retail units and some living accommodation along the lane at the back of the Boots service yard. And that links us across then into areas like the Gwyn Hall. So it's all part of the wider package of redeveloping the town centre. The commercial property grant is something that we sort of undertook for a few years, but unfortunately, because of the finances that we have available, we've only ever been able to look at the externals on properties. The new grant will look far more, it'll allow us far more scope than that by allowing us to look at both external and internal works, which will help some of these businesses set themselves up for shoppers hopefully coming back into town post-COVID, and to help regenerate the town centre. One of the problems, obviously, for us, generally speaking, is that the refurbishment of these properties can be prohibitive for local businesses, especially wanting to take up space within the town centre, and also for those people who already own property to undertake refurbishment works that would make the properties more attractive and help regenerate the town centre. So I think that would be a major plank in allowing us to reshape the town centre and to focus these grants on the key retail areas and enable them to thrive going forward. Moving on to Abraham, the Abraham constituency. Again, Port Talbot Civic Square. The Civic Centre there was developed back in completed 1987. The square was very much of its time at that point, and it doesn't allow us, because of the raised planters there and the sculpture in the middle, which used to be a fountain as well. It doesn't really allow a great deal of use of the town square other than a little bit of seating. What we're proposing to do is to remove the planters and the sculpture, clear the area out a little bit with resurfacing, again putting some electrical hookups and siting a screen within the square to encourage more community use, events, festivals, etc., which we've had a reasonable amount of interest in over the years, but it's a very difficult public space to use for those purposes. The Riverside project, and that's an indicative sort of drawing at the moment, which we had through yesterday, and we haven't really had a great deal of time to discuss at this point, is looking at the regeneration of that area, which lies between the river and the current post office building and the shops alongside it. It's a bit of a sort of a dead area at the moment. It has a limited amount of use. What we're looking to is bring far more use back into that, and critically to introduce a children's play area. It's currently sited at the far left side there, but we'll be having discussions as to whether that should be sited there or move it further into the town centre alongside where the post office is, to create a bit of a play area which will attract parents, etc., and a focus for children who are coming into the town centre, and also to another facility. Obviously, we've increased the amount of town centre living over the last few years in Neath and in Port Talbot, and it will offer a play area for those who are either now living within the town centre itself or visiting relatives there. So we could see a little bit of a proposal there, some hard landscaping as well, and they encouraged the shops alongside from the post office down to the Rubens Public House to sort of go out onto the piazza area and to offer a very good food and drink offer. Again, similar to the Neath constituency, this is looking at the commercial property grants that will allow us to help regenerate the town centre. We've in the detail we've scoped those for all commercial areas within the county borough, within the 2 constituencies, and we'll be looking to roll those out into any commercial areas that we possibly can.
Okay, this is the last slide. So in terms of the funding application, we need to meet determined outputs, outcomes and outcome indicators. And in terms of outcome indicators, so we'll be looking at evidencing these with surveys, land value, so with valuations and footfalls through surveys and monitoring. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Happy to take questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. There are a number of questions. We've had a good debate at our pre-briefing. So can I ask Councillor Arwin Wilcock, please, first?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the first point I made, Simon, Lisa, in the briefing, and I think it's an important one. It's a political one, so I don't expect you to get involved in this. But it's the very foundation of this funding, and obviously we accept funding. Goodness knows we can all do with it. But it's the way it's been done by the UK government. It is effectively bypassing the Senedd and members of the Senedd, which is a properly elected, devolved administration. Same applies for Scotland, of course, and Northern Ireland. So it's disappointing, really, at the way that they've gone about this, notwithstanding the time limits as well, which is putting pressure on officers and local authorities to come up with schemes in order to be able to comply. I do have a couple of and the other point I wanted to mention as well is the fact that I note on the bottom of page 7 and the top of page 8, and it is disappointing to note this as well, that a meeting between officers and a UK government official to discuss bids for the valleys communities resulted in the official encouraging the council to develop bids with a focus on the themes of the UK Levelling Up prospectus. This is yet another example, in my opinion, of bypassing the valleys again and ignoring the valleys and the desperate investment that is needed there. The couple of questions that I have, the first one is, in the case of commercial property grants, and I note that buildings can be acquired as well, there's the acquisition of buildings, is the council in a position to refuse to purchase former bank buildings? And I say that because we've all witnessed the bank closures in Pontardawe, for example, and in GCG sometime before that. And more recently, for people living up in the Upper Amman Valley, the closure now of Barclays Bank in Ammanford, albeit across the border in Carmarthenshire, it is still one of the closest remaining banks available to people in the Upper Amman Valley. So would we be able to refuse to purchase or to acquire former bank buildings, because in doing so, we would only encourage banks to close more branches? Perhaps that is more a question for Craig, Simon, I agree. And the second question, in order for the investment that is proposed for the town centres to be shared and enjoyed by people living in the valleys, are we happy to invest in transport for valleys communities as well? Because that's another area that the valleys communities are suffering badly from, is lack of transport. So thank you for that. I'm grateful to you, Chair, for your indulgence.
No problem at all. Simon, you ready to?
The first one, in terms of the bank premises, I understand, as I've just had notification this week that my local bank is closing, and having moved it from a previous one into that one, I now find that so I think it is a difficult situation. The problem I think we would have on that, and Craig can advise on the legal side of it, but the difficulty I think we have is that sometimes the banks are some of the prettiest buildings and some of the nicest, more iconic buildings we've got within our town centres. And I understand that it might be seen as a sort of an encouragement to them, but generally speaking, they'll put them on the market and sell them anyway, and people will buy them, and then they'll apply to us for the grant. So I suspect that we would end up dealing with that at that point, if you like, and trying to bring them back into more beneficial use, because whilst I absolutely understand the point, and it's disappointing that the banks are taking this move at the moment, and it seems to be increasing rapidly, we still would like to see those buildings being used beneficially within the town centres rather than being void premises. On the second point regarding transport, and I'm not sure if Nick wants to comment on this because she probably knows a little bit more about it than I, because it would really come under Dave Griffiths' section as part of environment and engineering and transport. I know there are moves to look at to encourage transport within the valleys and whether there are any community schemes that can come into play, but it doesn't really, unfortunately, form part of what we were doing as part of this scheme as it stands.
Okay, Nicola, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thank you. If I could, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, we acknowledge that transport is critical to ensure we've got connectivity to our valley areas, linking them up to sort of commercial areas, linking them up to schools, linking them up to shops and places of employment. So we acknowledge it's critical. One of the first potential opportunities we were looking to explore under this fund was to reinforce the community transport provision and to try and make it more sustainable and by utilising low emission vehicles. We have, however, managed to secure money from the transport grant to undertake a number of pilot schemes within the county borough. So we are trialling those pilot schemes within certain areas of the county borough using alternative Welsh Government funding at the moment. And if those schemes are successful, then we will use those as evidence to try and secure additional funding in the future so that we can reinforce that connectivity and make it available to more people so that we are making our valley areas truly accessible to all at an affordable rate. So we didn't include it within this bid at the moment because we have to be careful about duplication of funding, because that's one of the issues associated with the UK funding applications, is you can't duplicate projects that are already being delivered under alternative funding schemes. So we're not indicating whatsoever that it's not important. It is critical to us, but we are implementing other pilot schemes within the county borough using alternative funding at present. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Arwen, do you wish to come back?
No, that's fine, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, the next I have on my list is Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Thanks, Chair. I think I can give Arwen an answer to his first question. I think we all know the political agenda behind the government's levelling up plans in Wales. It's a rebranding of the Conservative UK government's image and a blatant attempt to undermine devolution and bypass the Welsh Government by reasserting Westminster control. And these are concerns that have been raised legitimately by the First Minister and the Welsh Local Government Association, among others. Now we have a bizarre situation where Westminster MPs will be consulted on the plans, but not our local Senedd members who have only just been democratically elected. And the process also obliges local authorities to compete for what is already an inadequate amount of funding over the 4-year period, while we still don't have guarantees that the Shared Prosperity Fund will fully replace the former European Union structural funds in Wales, which was a previous commitment. Now, obviously, we have to participate because we need to access any available support for our communities. And I do appreciate the work of the teams in drawing proposals together, but I have the following questions. What is the officer's view of the timescales that have been allowed for bids? Is it known how often there will be funding rounds? And will a programme be worked up for future bids so that all the county borough can benefit? Because we need to level up within Neath Talbot as well, particularly in relation to the valley areas. And what is the relationship of these funding streams to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund? Thank you.
Right. I think the first one, if I answered that politely, what was the officer's view on the timescale allowed? Challenging. You know, we were allowed very, very little time to try and put these bids together, which isn't, I don't think it really benefits either the funder or us as applicants for the funding. But nevertheless, that is where we are, and you know, we've made our best efforts to try and get a coherent set of proposals together that we think could hopefully deliver us the funding that we're looking for. In terms of how often there will be funding rounds, there's no specific information available at the moment, and that's part of the problem that we've had over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks when we've been going through this, is that the information has been sort of a little bit drip fed through to us, and that has made life a little bit more challenging again, because in an answer to probably your third question about how working up future bids so that all of the county borough can benefit, our initial proposal was around effectively a sites and premises offer, where we looked at what we wanted to do was increase the number of industrial units, because we have 8 or 9 industrial sites under our control throughout the county borough, majority of which are 100% let. And you know, we see that as a critical element in improving the life in our communities by offering space to develop jobs, which is the cornerstone of improving people's lives generally. And without that, you know, it's a struggle. So that was our initial bid for the county borough. But having had a discussion with UK government officers, we were sort of guided away from that, if you like, and told to focus on the town centres, which was part of the criteria that they were offering us. I mean, in terms of setting out criteria, obviously, as you understand, that's not any different on this scheme, really, on this funding programme to any of the others. They will all set out their criteria and look for you to challenge the bids that way. And that's what we've had to do, unfortunately. In terms of the relationship of the funding streams to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, well, obviously, it's a forerunner to the Shared Prosperity Fund, which will launch in April 22. And I understand that the priorities and the framework for that will come out some point in the summer, but we're not told when.
So, I think you're on mute, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Alan, do you wish to come back?
Yes, very, very briefly. I appreciate the replies, and I realise the constraints the officers have been working under, but I think that I think we need to keep on reiterating the issues, particularly in advance of the Shared Prosperity Fund criteria being set, because we don't want to be in the same situation again. You know, it would obviously be much better in a devolved country if we were able to have this dialogue and a better understanding of the needs of the different communities with our own government, with our own Welsh government. So I hope these lessons will be learned before the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is criteria set in stone. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Next on my list is Councillor Steve Hunt, please.
Chair, I think Karen Jones had her hand up.
Oh.
I don't know if you wanted to make a response first. Thank you.
Okay, Karen, please.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Simon's response to Councillor Llewellyn, if I may, Chair, about the future planning and the future rounds of funding. It looks to us as if we're going to be increasingly in a position where we're going to be competing for funding in a number of different areas. And I think what's really important for members to know, and I know you know this anyway, is we need to increase the capacity within our economic development team to enable us to develop those proposals so that they're, if you like, they're on the shelf ready to submit. Because when we face with such tight deadlines around funding, and we had this conversation the other week, didn't we, about Kevin Coyd as well, we've got to make sure that we've done enough of the due diligence around it, so we're not submitting proposals that then are not workable for some reason because we've just had inadequate amount of time to get those proposals into a good shape. And I think what that does as well is it gives us the opportunity to be more inclusive in generating ideas as to what could be included in some of these project ideas as well. So as you know, you approved some additional funding in this year's budget for the economic development team. There is some small amount of administrative funding involved with these bids as well, which we can take some advantage of. And I know that Simon is well developed now in thinking about how he can reshape his team and give us a bit more capacity to be able to be more on the front foot on some of this stuff than where we've been on this occasion. I've got to take my hat off to the team because they've absolutely worked their socks off, Lisa, Julia and Simon, to get us to the position we're in. So I thought it was just useful, Chair, to say that we are going to need to have a pipeline of projects. And within our ability, you know, we're really committed, Councillor Llewellyn, to try and get those on the shelf as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair.
Steve, do you want to go now?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Woolcock and Councillor Llewellyn, and Councillor Woolcock already asked a couple of points that I was going to raise, so I'll steer clear of them. And I thank Karen for that bit of response as well, because I certainly agree with how tough and how hard our teams work in limited resources within their own in-house, so they do a tremendous job. But she touched on speaking about Kevin Coyd only last week, which was a very passionate and very lengthy meeting in dealing with an aspect of Neath and Talbot Council. And I just wanted to touch on the UK's criteria and understanding of where we go in. I fully appreciate the Regeneration Town Centre investment in this report here today. However, transport has been touched on as well, how major it is. And Nicola, nice to see her speaking here today now with the active travel. Now that's part of the criteria for active travel. And while it's happening around the towns and so forth, again, the valley communities are missing out. And I noticed with the transport, when they mentioned active travel, they had bridge repairs, bus priorities and road improvement part of this criteria. Now, I hope investment does see its way through into our valley communities, because on their report as well was a culture investment maintaining regeneration and repurposing museums, galleries and visited attractions and heritage assets. Now, Kevin Coyd fits into that as well. You know, and I do appreciate you talking to the UK government on this, and they may be directing you, but I would have thought that our MPs and our officers in these debates could sort of explain where we feel that meeting the criteria we could focus on, because you know, it says with them investment proposals should focus on supporting high priority projects that make a visible impact on local areas. Well, there's not a lot in this report again today that helps the valley communities, because the report also got a positive impact on valley communities. I'd like an explanation on why you see what is here today is going to have a real positive impact on the valley communities, you know, for health and life changes and everything leveling up. It should come across the whole borough. And I do appreciate you've got to do it in stages, but I don't know if there's an answer to where we're going to be going next in some of the UK's priorities that we may have to implement. So I just wanted to get those couple of points. And then one thing for finish was we are a category 1. Can you explain exactly why that is? And I would suggest that probably some of the valley communities with high deprivation may have created us to fall into a category 1 priority, and yet then the investment isn't focused on that category within Neath and Talbot Council. So those are my brief questions, Chair. As I said, I agree with Alan and Arwen with the comments they've made also. Thank you.
No problem at all. Is it Simon or Nicola who's taking?
I'm happy to answer well, I'll answer the first bit, and then Lisa can pick up the other bit of it if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, one of the challenging bits of this is that when we come forward with proposals, we then have to take them to the economists to get them past the cost benefit ratio, and to see whether it really provides the impact that the UK government are looking for. And that is quite challenging with some of the proposals. It's not necessarily just giving us cash to go off and do, broadly speaking, what we would like to do and what we think might make an impact within the community. It has to pass a series of tests. And that's the bit that would concern me about some of the projects. And that's when we looked at deliverability, that was one of our challenges. And that's why when we looked at unfortunately, we had to take the Arts Centre in Pontardawe out, because the other sort of slight issue is that they view the packages as a whole. So if one of them doesn't pass the test, then that can sometimes drag the other two down as well. And then there was a question on timing, I think, was there? Lise?
There was a question on the priority areas.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's right.
And the investment priorities, heritage, and travel, and yeah. So, and also the priority areas in terms of with category 1. So there's on the UK government website, there's a list of category 1 areas and category 2 areas. So Neath and Talbot, along with a number of local authority areas in Wales, are categorised as category 1. It's under the European structural funds. We were under the West Wales and the Valleys areas, and that was looked at GVA, and there's a number of criteria that they used for this, and this I can share it with you. I won't admit to be an expert in it, but I can share it with this group, and you can see how we categorise as category 1.
Okay, thank you. Nicola?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the concerns that Councillor Hunt has raised in terms of whether or not there's going to be a benefit for the valleys, as Simon's indicated earlier on, we did want to initially sort of apply for bid for funding for sites and premises, because we felt that would make a real economic difference. Unfortunately, we were steered away from that proposal. But, Simon and Lisa have indicated in the presentation that we are investing quite a significant chunk of the money in terms of commercial property grants, both internally and externally. Now, those are not just focused on those town centre areas. They are going to benefit the whole of Neath and Talbot, including the valley areas. And by regenerating commercial premises within the whole of Neath and Talbot, it demonstrates improved confidence in our commercial properties, and hopefully it'll boost confidence in private investors in developing in those buildings and building their businesses up and focusing on bringing people back to those local as well as those town centres. So, we consider that it does benefit all in terms of that element of the bid. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Steve, do you wish to come back? Do you have any further questions?
Only briefly, not further questions. I still believe it's tokenism with what Nicola has said. There's no major investment. I appreciate they led by the science and everything else that's been part of this bid, but it doesn't give me great confidence if when there's money being led from UK into our Neath and Talbot Council. When you see that report, you will find that the valley communities are the major reason we category 1. Make no mistake about that, and yet the money again is sort of being spent elsewhere. I'm not debating why our officers. I support them 100%. I know they got to follow all the legal responsibilities. So there's no criticism of anything here. It's more criticism of the UK government. While they got their criteria, and I've read them, and it does fit in with the valleys. So I would ask one last thing, Chair, if I may, is that when officers and I think the general public really need to know and understand why investment goes or how it goes from the source, because while they read the reports, they'll see that it could go everywhere else, and it doesn't, for the reasons being given by our officers today, and that's no blight on them. So I think it's important that we get to understand why the money goes and gets spent in the areas of regeneration as we see it going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Next, Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to follow on from my colleagues very much. My understanding of regeneration, which is not as wide as other people's, but my understanding is very much that if you regenerate the margins, the centre can benefit. However, it rarely works the other way round, and we've seen that a lot in Neath Talbot. We've seen, you know, the centre regenerated, but nothing comes to the valleys. So I follow on from those remarks and feel quite strongly, and therefore had a conversation with Simon Brennan before the meeting, like my colleague Aaron Wilcock, and very much appreciate the constraints that officers are operating under, and the lack of understanding or willingness to understand in our UK government of our situations in our communities, and to rely on the expertise that we have. I'm grateful for the transport money. We are getting a reasonable amount in the Ammon and Tuch Valley. However, it is cars, and cars have limitations and are good for short term, but not for trips down to Neath or into Talbot or, you know, Swansea so much. So it's, and not for mass transport in that way. So there is a need for buses in addition to help that. I talked with him about Cwmgors workshops where we have almost dereliction. And my question is very much one of, if we are constrained with this funding and we can do things in the town centres with this funding, then other funding that may become available, can we have a commitment from council and officers to focus on the valley communities? Because we need to meet what we've put in the Valleys Action Plan. We've already seen money that was from the Valleys Initiative from the Welsh Government, the task force from the Welsh Government, invested in the town centres more than the valleys. And we really, really need to make that commitment to our valleys.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. On commitment then, Simon, what's your view?
I think, as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, really, every time we have a new funding stream that comes through, there is a set of criteria that goes with it about where you can possibly get schemes through. It is a challenge, and I mean, even under all of these schemes, they'll give you a raft of different things. But as I said earlier, it has to pass certain tests in terms of the economics, and for the economists to be happy with them, and that's inevitably slightly more challenging in the valleys than it is in the town centre communities. I mean, that said, I mean, we will continue to look for funding for all of the county borough and to try and do, good work wherever we can, because as Nick touched on as well, our initial proposal here was around sites and premises, which would really have benefited the valley communities, I think, because we have a high percentage of our industrial portfolios within valley communities. And I think that, that's what we see as a benefit. But nevertheless, and part of the more recent funding from Welsh Government has tended to focus around town centres. They have a town centre first policy. So, that tends to then push the funding in one direction rather than another. But we'll carry on looking and obviously apply for anything that we possibly can. Okay.
Thank you, Simon. Sonia, do you wish to come back?
No, that's fine.
That's
Thank you. I think the officers are doing the best they can.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. The next on my list is Councillor Sandra Miller, please. Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. I was a little bit perplexed when I read the the actual stakeholders that met with to discuss this, and I was really disappointed not to see community and town councils in amongst this, because they do a significant amount of work in the community, get a lot of information from the community about what they want, what they need. And I was now really disappointed that we didn't have that within the process. Yes, we had the bid, the Talbot bid, businesses, and no disrespect, you know, we've always had the Chamber of Trade to be able to take that element around, but every port in a storm, you know, the MPs, I have to say, they to me, they are far more of a strategic grouping. They deal with Parliament. They take our message to Parliament. And whilst, yes, they're a part of the community and they might need to know, but those that are actually working in the community, I believe, should have been brought on board. And that is a significant part, you know, the CBS of this world, the town councils of this world, there is a number of different people that could have been brought on board quickly with a raft of information to be able to feed into this. I don't doubt the officers' commitment whatsoever. I've seen how they work. In the past, we always had schemes on the shelf, and I take on board totally the position that the department's in. All of them have lost staff, and this was going to be a consequence of it. So we need to have a good staffing base there to be able to go forward, because if we've got to go out and grab money, that's what we got to do, and we have to have the staff in place to be able to say this is a scheme that will match that pot of money. I heard a lot in the presentation, and it, no, from the bit that I saw, I was quite impressed. But you know, you're saying about electrical hookups, yeah, that ticks the box. Shame we haven't got any mechanics in the area to deal with electric cars. It's renowned for its absence. No apprentices are able to learn that skill. I'll now say this, my grandson's a third-year apprentice, mechanic apprentice, and as he's indicated, there is no course for them to go look at how to deal with cars that we want to bring into the area, the vehicles we need to bring into the area, because the government are going ahead with the reducing of petrol and diesel vehicles in the not too distant future. So we need to bring that on board as well. And no, as Simon said, one of the industrial units or a couple of the industrial units could have picked up on that fact and you know, got the training in place. I've ticked off a lot of these things. Victoria Gardens is our green space in Neath Town Centre. Fabulous facility. Now, well liked amongst everybody that goes there. And you're talking about having a park, you know, children's play area in Port Talbot, which is, you know, really needed. If we put in properties there, you know, flats, whatever, we need to have the facilities for kids to use. Otherwise, we just condemning another set of children to the streets to play. And I suggest that now we really keep an eye on the Victoria Garden play area so that that can be brought up to a level where young mums can go with their kids to play. And that's all I'm going to say, Chair. But I accept the scheme, totally accept the scheme, I think, you know, it's a start, but we got to be on the ball to actually go and grab the money. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. Nicola?
Thank you, Chair. The members made reference to the stakeholders that were involved in this this bidding process and the strategic nature of the MPs. Now, one of the requirements of the bidding process is that we secured endorsement from the relevant MPs associated with the constituencies. So we had to secure endorsement from the MP for Neath and the MP from Aberafan, and we have to get a letter of endorsement from them. Now, in terms of the other stakeholder engagement, we have consulted with a range of private sector representatives, and they form part of the Economic Strategy Board that is currently supporting the City Deal programme, and we're looking at potentially looking at their remit going forward to see if we can look to expand their role in working with the authority as private sector advisors and as interested parties in the development of our community. We also consulted with the Public Services Board, which you'll know is where there are representatives from other public agencies and the third sector. Simon's mentioned already a couple of times that the timescales associated with this bidding process were very, very challenging, and I think he's being kind there. You know, when it started, I think we were all worried as to whether or not anybody would get this bidding process, you know, get proper bids in place over the line within the very restricted timescales, given the amount of work that was involved. So I think, you know, the officers within the directorate have done really well to engage with so many people proactively within the very small tight timescales we've had, albeit acknowledging you can always do more if you're given a little bit of time, a little bit extra time. But, you know, we have tried to engage with as many stakeholders as possible. In terms of the skills that you mentioned, I think we are aware of that issue. You know, we are progressing two City Deal projects. One is a regional project and one is Neath Talbot based, which is supporting innovation and low carbon growth. We acknowledge that in order to support our economy going forward, we need skilled people from within our communities to support that economic development agenda, and we are working with the further and higher education sectors, including Swansea University, University of St David's and Neath Talbot College, to ensure that the courses that they are providing for our young people and those who are wishing to reskill are appropriate to meet the needs of our changing economy. So that is on, you know, we are well aware of that, and we are working with those education providers to ensure that our communities are provided with the skills and talent they need in order to support our economy. I acknowledge what you've said in terms of Victoria Gardens. It is a conservation area, so we need to safeguard and protect that conservation area, and sometimes we need to pull some of the stresses away from that area and provide alternative areas for activities within our town centres. So I think it's a balancing act between safeguarding that area but also making it accessible for families going forward. And as I say, we're hoping to make the town centres more family-friendly areas so that they can benefit, you know, a greater cross-section of our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Simon, please.
Just to add, Chair, just for clarification, the electrical hookups that I mentioned were more to do with us being able to support events, which is, you know, for electrical hookups for stalls, etc., to allow us to do those. We are, as Nick said, we are looking at electrical hookups generally because that's part of our wider strategy around EV, which we're developing at the moment. And as Nick said, the skills and training part of that will be developed going forward, subject to obviously getting City Deal funding.
Okay, Nick, oh no, that's fine. Next on my list is Councillor Sean Percy, please. Sean?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Cracking, thanks. Thanks, Lisa and Simon, for the report today. And yeah, I've got to agree with some of the comments. It's sort of far from an ideal scenario in terms of the priorities of this fund, not necessarily aligning with Welsh Government priorities. And, you know, that being said, you know, we've got to take advantage of it. And I know I've got to put up on record my thanks to the team as well. I know it's been a very tight timescale, as everyone said. And I understand some areas elsewhere may not be putting bids in at all. So it's great work that we've managed to do that. And again, just thanks, Karen, for sort of reinforcing that point about us being ready to deal with these things. You know, we've obviously shown that we've been able to pull something together. Welcome that, you know, there's going to be some more support to the team to make these things happen. I guess in terms of the sort of projects that have been prioritised, there's been a bit of discussion about that, and I guess that comes back to that capacity, doesn't it? You know, what is on the shelf? What have we been talking about for a while? You know, some of these are familiar projects to me, things we've maybe discussed in the past but not fully realised. But you know, I can think of my own ward, for example. You know, New Bridge Road Bridge. You know, that could tick many of the boxes actually in this fund. But I know it's not in a state to be delivered. You know, we've been working with officers to do that, and perhaps we'll get there soon. But it's a prime example of a project that could be subject to an application, but not quite yet. And I guess Kevin Coyd fits in that box. You know, it's on the long list there, and you can, you know, imagine if that was deliverable and less risky. If we worked up the scheme, it would be higher up if you look at that prioritisation. And I guess hopefully that extra resource in the team will help us get more of these projects ready to go. So I just kind of wanted to pick up on that. But in terms of the scheme submitted, just a couple of quick points from me. In terms of Port Talbot, how are we sort of creating this focus on sports, arts, heritage and culture? And we've talked about it as a cross-cutting theme. You know, are there going to be specific features in the Civic Square or in the Riverside development? You know, I can see there's some potential perhaps to join up with some of the work the Rich History Group's been doing in Port Talbot. And I know they've spoken to Andrew Collins and the team, you know, over the last 18 months and 2 years about some ideas there, because, you know, we've got a huge opportunity to sort of celebrate our cultural heritage and make Port Talbot a much more distinctive place culturally. So yeah, I'd be keen to know if we fleshed out any of that yet, but certainly if we haven't, I'd be more than willing to give my input on some ideas on how we could do that. And just lastly on the property grants, just a point on that really. I know we've had some great results on that scheme over the years, but there's been some reluctance and resistance from some property owners who've got some properties got a shocking state to take up the grant, and hopefully this internal element might nudge them to feel like it's a bit more beneficial for them, because I think some people don't seem to be interested in what's outside, only what's inside for them. So I hope that does increase the take up, and if it does, that'll maybe sort out some of these niggling properties that are a bit of a blight on the town centres. Thanks, Chair, for giving me the time, and thanks again for the reports.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Simon?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the cultural element, Councillor Percy, obviously we're developing that at the moment because, as you know, we haven't had a great deal of time, but you're right, there are a lot of groups out there who I think can channel into that and provide some really good content. And I think that will be part of the process now, is to, I mean, between submission and when we get to hear whether we've been successful or not, is to use that time wisely to try and integrate with some of those groups and to come up with some good proposals that reflect the culture of both the Abraham and Neath constituencies and integrate it into the work that we're doing. On the property grant side, I understand, and I can think of some of the examples that you're speaking about actually. I think hopefully this should be an increased carrot for them. But I think, you know, you are right. Whilst this will be an increased carrot, we need the increased stick as well. And that's what we're looking at in terms of the CPO work. So I think that should hopefully be a bit of a pincer movement that will persuade them one way or the other that they either improve the situation or let somebody else do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Simon.
No problem. Thank you very much. There are three further indication now, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to take any further question on this report. So the next is Councillor Susan Paddison, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the difficulty is with this, and I understand making a priority out of all the suggestions that have come forward. It must have been a really difficult task. And we've got to get to the root cause of all of this. This is the 11th year of this so-called Tory austerity that has caused all the need for all organisations everywhere, local authorities, third sector, whatever, to be so starved of oxygen for their regeneration work. I'm not going to be giving this government any kudos for giving us a small amount with so many strings. If they really, even the name to me, levelling up, it doesn't level up. It goes towards levelling up, but we would need to have an awful lot more money spent outside England, in Wales, for it to be levelling up. So I'm a little bit annoyed at the thought that they are actually going to be sitting back and saying, oh, well, we've helped areas in Wales, when yes, they have to a small degree. They could do an awful lot more, notwithstanding taking away the strings from these things, taking away the deadlines and making it so hard for people to actually get this money, which they are so proud to say that they are levelling up with. So that's my soapbox over. But at which stage do we actually have to get agreement from the MPs as to the projects? Is it right at the beginning? Because I can't see that it should be at the end, because we'd have wasted work if they don't agree. So Simon, can you tell me where in the process you actually approach the MPs?
We've had that consultation already. It's fairly early in the process, because obviously we need to make sure that they're on board with it.
Okay.
I mean, for us, it's an easier process, because obviously within the county borough, we've got the 2 constituencies. There are some which are cross county borough. I think down in Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire they have one, and that's slightly more tricky then. But I think it's been done early in the process, and both MPs were supportive of the proposals that were coming forward.
Well, thank you, but I do sympathise with officers, because this is a complete turnaround to the way you normally operate. And I do concur with Councillor Wilcock. They're just trying to keep the Senedd out of this altogether, and I think it's scandalous. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Next on my list is Councillor Nigel Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Saif. I'd like to thank the officers for the report today, and they've had to do this in adverse conditions. On here it says about the 3 priorities for the Levelling Up Fund are transport investments, regeneration and town centre investment and cultural investment. So, I would have liked really some of the town centre members to have been part of it. I'm really pleased to see that the Civic Square in Talbot is finally going to have some investment. It's very dated. And when we've got cultural investment, town centre investment, I think the Princess Royal Theatre sort of really fits into that really well. Again, it's had minimal investment for a long time. The Princess Royal. A lot of people say to me about the signage there. People don't even know where the theatre is when they're in the town centre. So I think that that could be a quick fit for a part of the bid. We might be able to get some money for that. I'd also like to say, really, there's another area sort of between the Civic Centre and the multi-storey car park, in between the subways. That area is being neglected, and maybe would be a good play area for a lot of the kids around here. We don't have a lot of play areas anywhere in our town centres. So that might be an area you might want to think about. And also a bus station. You talk about the bus station in Abraham is probably one of the busiest transport hubs in the county, and again it's had minimal investment. The main part of the bus station closes well before the bus services stop, so then we have just a single bench which sometimes, you know, you get the kids, because they've got nowhere else to go, the kids are on them benches, and of course it's intimidating, particularly for older people, when they're waiting for the next bus, they have nowhere to go. That might be somewhere where we could put money, because it fits into this quite well, and we could brighten that area up. And finally, I'd like to say, I did ask when in full council, when the auditor came, if we could have a map of the 14 ward areas that fell in the 10% most deprived in Wales, in the wind. I've asked for a map of that, and I know that a few councillors have said today about we're only in category 1 because of the valley areas. Well, I'd like to see that map, and I'd like all that to be available for all councillors to see the map, so we can see the areas in NPT which are deprived. So that's it. Really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Anyone, Simon or Nicola, do you wish to respond?
In terms of the proposals, I mean, you know, we obviously we had a long list this time that we quickly got down to a short list, and I think the idea is that we try and get an even longer list of things that we can look at, and then develop them out to a certain stage so that we can take them forward when the opportunity arises. In terms of the map, happy to look at that and see how that may come from the centre rather than us possibly. They may have that information, and we can make an inquiry about that. I think the bit, and sorry to sound like a bit of a broken record on some of these things, but the difficulty we're going to have with some proposals, I think, is getting them to work in terms of the economics, because this isn't money that's given to us for schemes that we want to do necessarily. It's given to us where we can prove the economic benefit, and that's where the challenge would arise.
Right, can I just say that in the shopping centre, that area of Aberafan, we pay about £1 million in business rates around that area. So I think in terms of economics, we'd have a strong case in that specific town centre area if we were to look at the rates that we were receiving, or the Welsh Government was receiving.
Okay, brilliant.
In terms of economics, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Nicola?
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, I endorse everything that's been said. You know, we have taken account of the need to provide a children's area and improve the character and appearance and welcome more people into the town centre, which is why we sort of identified that area along the riverside, because I suppose it's right at the hub of the town centre. It links the Aberafan shopping centre to Station Road, so it links those two areas together, and it may then kickstart more footfall down towards the Station Road end of Talbot. It's right in the heart of the town centre. You know, there's sufficient room for parents to watch their children play safely, and as well as enjoying some sort of retail therapy as well. So we acknowledge what you're saying, Councillor Hunt, and that's the reason we chose that particular location, but also having regard to the fact that there are other areas in the town centre that we could invest in should funding come forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Finally, I have Councillor Sharon Friegat, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just like to echo what everybody has said, and the team has done an amazing job within such a limited time scale. To pick up on some points and to follow on from Nicola about regeneration, we've put an awful lot of regeneration into the top end of Station Road. We've got the Grand has just been taken over. There's lots of money gone in there for redevelopment. We've got the Plaza, huge amounts of money and grant money from Welsh Government gone in there. And I think picking up on your point, Simon, about the electrical hookups, if we could consider for the future the hub area, because the transport hub, you know, is an ideal place for different kinds of events, picking up on what Percy said about the art and the culture and the proximity to the old plaza. So, you know, we've got a ready-made centre there, if you could consider that in the future for events, because as you know, we do have the market there, and I think that would be something that we need to develop. I don't want to see that side of things fall when we've put so much effort and time and money into that. But you know, it's amazing the projects that we have got going on down the other end as well. And I think the play area will do really well in bringing people in. And but I just want you to consider the transport hub for the future, because you know, I don't want to see that particular area now be neglected in a way. But the electrical hookup, Simon, would be great there.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, can I now take you to the recommendations which are on page 13, which is going to Cabinet straight after this meeting. I will need a proposer and a seconder.
I move, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. Seconder, please.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. If you now go back to the Cabinet Scrutiny agenda, the next item is item number 5, which is the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme for 2020 to 2021. This Forward Work Programme is for noting. Can I ask, do members have anything to add? No. Chloe, is there anything that you wish to add?
No, Chair, this is for noting. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, item number 6, urgent items. As previously mentioned, we have one urgent item. However, we have decided not to scrutinize this as we are happy with the recommendation contained within the report. This just leaves me to say then, thank you very much for attending, and I now call this meeting to close. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Talbot, aye.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.
Bravo.